This
evaluation.
conference will now be recorded.
Before discussing about strategy of low vision evaluation, I would like to discuss something on low vision. Just give me 2 minutes. I'll after this hang. Okay. So visual impairment is a major health concern all over the world. It includes low vision as well as blindness. Low vision is defined as visual acuity of less than 6 by 18, but equal to or better than 3 by 60 in better eye after best possible correction, and visual field less than 10 degree from point of fixation. And blindness is defined as a visual acuity which is worse than 3 by 60 with the best possible correction, or a visual field of 10 degree or less in better eye. If you see the prevalence rate, 285 million people are visually impaired worldwide. Out of that, 39 million are blind and 246 million have low vision. Globally, if we see 85% of all visual impairment and 75% of blindness could be prevented or cured worldwide. And if you see the epidemiology, 39% of the population have been affected by cataract. 18% of the population have been affected by uncorrected refractive error. 10% of the population have been affected by glaucoma. 7% of the population have been affected by AMD, that is age-related macular degeneration. 4% of the population have been affected by diabetic retinopathy, and 3% of the population have been affected by childhood blindness. 3% of the population have been affected by trachoma, and 0.7% of the population have been affected by onchocerciasis, and rest 11% have been affected by some other factor. Moving towards the visual field loss, like if we see the low vision patient, they may have cloudy media effect, they may have central field defect. If like again, it depends upon the disease condition. If their macula has been affected, then they may have central field defect, and if they have like early stage of glaucoma RP, they may have peripheral field defect. Now, purpose of low vision evaluation, like why we need to assess the low vision people. Main thing is like to assess the residual vision and to correlate it with the individual social, educational, vocational, and other needs, and to identify the ways and to enhance the residual visual functions to make an individual socially active. Main thing like we want that patient to be independent and either socially, economically, and professionally. And if you see the previous literature, like there are so many studies, like we have seen even in practitioner, they have very lack of knowledge, awareness, and training of low vision evaluation. And even if we see the general population, they are not aware of low vision. They have less vision, but they think that might be because of age, or I was born like this, because of that my vision is this. So they don't give concern, they are not concerned, and they don't give priority to their vision. So always it's like we need to have idea what all things we have to do in evaluation. Moving towards the evaluation of low vision patient, there are 5 points to be focused on evaluation part. First one is observation. Next is sighted guide, history taking, initial evaluation strategies, and specialized testing in low vision. And moving towards the patient observation, one thing we should remember that when low vision patient walks to our clinic, they have already been diagnosed with their eye disease condition. So you have to observe on certain things like how they are walking, are they taking anybody support, and how they are fixating the things, like either they have central fixation or eccentric viewing. And even you have to observe their body posture, and you have to see the psychology of the patient, because it gives us idea that patient are really ready to accept the service or not. And even we have to see either they are motivated or depressed one, because at the end, if patient is very depressed, obviously he won't be able, he won't be ready to accept the device, and he won't be able to go to the rehab. And even appearance also matters a lot, because it gives us idea that how that patient is taking care of themselves, like uh, are they able to maintain their day-to-day activities or they are not. So according to that, it will be easy for us to suggest the right device for them. Now, moving towards the next point, that is sighted guide. As we know, low vision patient, they have very less vision. So always it's better to go towards the patient. Like as a practitioner, you should go near to the patient and always ask patient to hold your hand. And how you have to hold, like it's shown in the picture. Like always ask patient to hold your hand above the elbow, and patient finger thumb should be projected towards you, and the four fingers should be towards the practitioner. And always the practitioner should walk little front so that it will be easy for the patient to follow you. And if there is narrow corridor, and then if you want to take the turn, so just in the second picture it is shown, like just behind, like bend your hand little behind, so that uh, patient will get idea that okay, now there is a narrow bend, or there is a narrow path or corridor is there, so I have to walk little slowly, and even he will bend his posture towards that portion. So even so, it will be easy for the patient to follow you. And now moving towards the history taking. History taking is the crucial part of the evaluation. If we are taking proper history, we can understand the patient needs and requirement. So always it is mandatory to take the detailed history, that is ocular history and general history. In ocular history, always we need to ask about the disease progression, because we'll get idea either the disease is like progression is same, or it has been worsened. Because at the end of the day, when you are prescribing the device, when you are counseling the patient, based on that you can counsel them. Suppose the patient is complaining 3 months back I was fine, but after 3 months now I'm not able to see the things, or things are going worsen, then you can, like, at least you can suggest them to the right path. Okay, rather than device, rehab is the best option for him. So during management part, it will be easy for us. And even we need to ask about the stability of the vision, and even current and previous use of spectacle, contact lens, and low vision devices. And if you see the general history, even this is the most important part, because many systemic illness have been directly effect on the ophthalmic, that is like in diabetes mellitus, hypertension, thyroid. And even we need to ask about the current medication status. Uh, and even we need to ask about their mobility, like do they take anybody support while walking, or while going here and there. And even you need to ask about their hobby, like what they like to do in their free time, because according to that we will get that what is the main why they came to us, like what are the expectations from us. So according, at the end, at least we can fulfill their expectation, and they can go with happy face. And now we have to ask about the educational and vocational status, because uh, according to that we'll get idea like what patient likes to do, what are the best options for him, what he likes to do in his free time, and what he wants to do in his free time, and what he wants to do in his professional life. So at least we can solve his problem. And even in history taking, always we need to ask about financial status, though it looks like little awkward, like how can we ask about his financial status. Like it's not like you can ask directly, like okay, how's your financial status. Like just in indirect way, like we can ask, are they dependent on someone, or are they main earning member of the family. So according to that we can suggest them and counsel them during rehab. See, in one, if uh, one member in the family is affected by low vision, then whole family will be affected. So, and if the main earning member of the family is affected, then whole family will be affected. So, if the main earning member of the family is affected, at least we can suggest him for the right occupation, so that he can run his day-to-day activities in better way. And in task-related history, it is important to consider patient occupation, because it helps us to understand the basic requirements of the patient. So in task related history, we have to talk about, we have to ask them about the distance related task, like uh, do you feel difficulty while walking on the road? Do you feel difficulty uh, while crossing the road? Do you feel difficulty to see the traffic signals? And for intermediate, we can ask like, do you feel difficulty
Excuse
while
me.
using? Yeah. Am I going a little fast?
Uh, I'm sorry to interrupt, but can we go a little bit slow?
Okay, okay, fine. I do speak little fast, that's right.
Okay.
Okay. Uh,
Okay, ma'am.
so, okay. In task-related history, it is important to consider patient occupation, because uh, it, it will help us to understand the basic requirements of the patient. And in daily living activities, in this, for the distance, we need to ask that, do you feel difficulty while crossing the road? Like, do you feel difficulty to see the board, or do you feel difficulty to see the traffic signals? And for the intermediate, we need to ask like, do you feel difficulty to use computer, laptop, and do you feel difficulty to while cooking and all? And for near, we need to ask like, do you feel difficulty while washing your face or while using mobile? while doing makeup, while eating food, because it gives like basic, like at least practitioner will get idea like what are the basic requirements of the patient. And if we see, and next part is lightning situation. Am I going more? Is it better or still the same? Am I
It's
fast?
better now.
Better, right? Just let me know, huh? Because I do speak very fast, so at least I can control.
Okay.
Okay. Uh, Even we need to take proper history about lightning condition, because uh, with that we'll come to know that patient is comfortable in bright light or in dim light. So according to that, while suggesting for the devices, we can manage them or guide them that okay, illuminated device is best for him, or non-illuminated devices are good for him. Either optical or non-optical devices are best option for them. And even history of previous low vision evaluation is important, and previous uses of low vision devices, because if you get idea that low vision before he was using low vision devices, but he was a failure of that, then at least we can guide him, that we'll get idea like why he was failure of that. Now at least we can counsel him in proper way, we can teach him, guide him, train him to use the devices in proper way. Suppose if he's using the devices and if he's fine, but still we can suggest him for the better new technology devices. So it is very much important to take previous use and for the evaluation and device. Moving to the evaluation strategies. Evaluation strategies has been divided into two parts, that is quantitative evaluation and qualitative evaluation. Visual acuity comes under quantitative evaluation, and under qualitative evaluation, contrast sensitivity testing, visual field, glare testing, mobility and binocularity comes. Now moving towards visual acuity assessment, always it is mandatory to measure distance and near acuity, and the standard gold standard chart uh, to measure the vision in low vision patients are logMAR or ETDRS, that is early treatment of diabetic retinopathy study. Always the vision chart designed for the low vision should be handheld or movable rather than fixed or projected. See, in our clinic, usually how it will be, like chart will be fixed at one point, right? But in low vision, always it is best to have the portable chart, because they have come to us because they have less vision. And when you ask patient, okay, come closer, come closer, come closer, they may be more demotivated. So always it's better try to move the chart closer to the patient. At least they feel okay, I can read the later. They may feel little motivated. Always how the way we are treating the patient will be comfortable. See, we go to doctor, and if the doctor is behaving so good to us, next time what we say, okay, I want to go to the doctor again, and we get so positive vibes. So same thing happens when patient comes to us. They comes with lots of expectation. They feel that okay, we are their god. So always make them comfortable, make encourage them to read, give them lots of time. No need to hurry, like okay, read fast. If you are not reading, then fine. No, not like that. And even if if you know, because you know you can see the diagnosis of the patient. If you feel that patient has macular abnormality, so obviously you will get idea his central field of view is lost, so he's managing through his eccentric viewing. So even you can ask him, okay, please read this line or read this appetite or target with his eccentric, the way you read or the way you see the things in your day-to-day activities. So you can record that visual acuity as well. And even one thing, like we should never document visual, like in low vision department, we should never document vision, uh, like like counting finger, hand movement, and all, because this is not the standard one. If you are documenting vision in like counting finger or hand movement, then you cannot calculate the magnification, how much magnification is required to the patient. So better to use the Berkeley rudimentary vision test. If patient is not able to read the chart at 1 meter or at 50 centimeter, better to go with Berkeley rudimentary vision test. This is the gold standard test to measure the patient visual acuity. Now moving towards the logMAR calculation. To logMAR calculation, am I okay now, or I'm going more fast? Is it okay?
It's fine, ma'am.
Okay, I'll be more slow.
Okay, ma'am.
in logMAR calculation, we can calculate it with three different formulas. One is 0.1 plus logMAR value of the baseline rate by the patient minus 0.02. 0.02, it signifies the value of the haplotype in logMAR chart into number of haplotypes read. See, in logMAR chart, as we know that there will be 5 haplotypes, and each haplotype it has worth of 0.02. It has value of 0.02. So we can calculate like a person read 2 haplotypes of 0.8 line. Suppose patient has read 2 haplotypes from 0.8 line, then we can calculate like 0.1 plus 0.8 minus 0.02 into 2, and we will get the logMAR acuity. Next formula is subtract value of number of haplotypes read to one line above the baseline. Suppose patient has read 0.89. So we have to consider the line above that line, that is 0.9. And you have to subtract it with the number of haplotypes he has read, that is into 0.02 into 2. Then we'll get log acuity. So again, it depends upon practitioner which formula you want to use. And next is add value of haplotypes not read to the same line. Suppose patient is reading 0.8 line and he is not able to read 2 haplotypes. So add the haplotypes which he has not read. That is like 3 haplotypes are remaining. So you can add 0.8 plus 0.06. So you got 0.06 by 3, the number of haplotypes not read by the patient, into 0.02. That is their value into that is 0.06. So you can get the logMAR. Now, moving towards the pinhole acuity assessment. Pinhole acuity assessment is very important, not only in the low vision department, in all our department, because the main principle of pinhole is it will increase the depth of focus. It will cut the periphery rays, and it is important to assess the presence or absence of refractive error improvement in vision, which indicates that the person may be benefit from the refractive correction. So we'll get idea, okay, patient vision may get improved with the correction. And then always, in case of nystagmus patient or media opacity patient, always it's better to use multiple pinhole, because see, in nystagmus patient, they have nystagmoid movement, that their eyes will be keep on moving. So if you are putting single hole pinhole, so what will happen? You are occluding patient eye, but only small hole is there. So again, nystagmoid movement will increase more, and then obviously the what he was seeing before, he won't be able to see that much. And again, in nystagmus patient, the null point will be different. Like all patients have different null point, and at their certain null points, like they will be able to see the things little clear. But if you are putting single hole, obviously they won't be appreciate to see the target, and their nystagmus movement will increase more. And in case of media opacity patient, also we need to use multiple pinhole target, multiple pinhole, here, see, suppose I would like to give one example. In case of posterior subcapsular cataract, if you are giving single hole pinhole, and obviously rather than increasing the depth of focus, he will, like, his vision will be more less. He won't be able to see the things. So if you put multiple pinhole, at least through periphery he can see the things, and at least we'll get idea, okay, patient vision may get improved with the correction. So always it is mandatory to keep multiple pinhole in your clinic, and especially in case of nystagmus patient and media opacity patient, we should use multiple pinhole. It is mandatory. Now, procedure to measure near acuity. Make sure your patient is corrected for the distance. Obviously, if you are measuring the near acuity, we have to do with the correction. Always record the testing distance. It is this point, like we have to write it down. Okay, at what distance patient is calculating. It is not only in our low vision department, even in our day-to-day practice, we have to measure their working distance, because it gives us idea that, okay, at what distance patient is comfortable to read the target. And measure at first, measure at 40 centimeter, and then at 25 centimeter also you can try, and later again measure at the distance, providing maximum resolution. And you can give the target chart to the patient, and you can ask them at what distance are you comfortable to see the target, and you can measure the distance. Other consideration we should do in visual acuity measurements is illumination. Illumination, it should be always uniform and glare free. If there is a glare in your target, in your chart, obviously rather than improving patient vision, it will be or it will be less. And always establish optimal level, like vary illumination until patient reports optimal comfort and image quality. In our uh, uh, logma chart in EDTRS, we can change the illumination. So you can change the illumination and can ask patient in which illumination they are comfortable, either at very low or in very high. And just we have to see like their visual performance. Suppose always go with the patient comfort also and image quality. And in case of retinitis pigmentosa and ARMD, they will be more happy in the bright condition. But in case of rod monochromatism, they won't be, they will feel comfortable in dim light. Moving towards the refraction part, uh, objective and subjective refraction is crucial evaluation. Now I would like to discuss about objective refraction. Objective method, objective value can be found by retinoscopy, where we can perform like either radical or near retinoscopy in our low vision department. I'll explain this in further slides. And even corneal keratometry and corneal topography we do just to see either patient has corneal astigmatism or not. Uh, Always, again, I'm talking, special consideration should be given to misdiagnosed patient and media opacity patient. See, in while doing refraction in misdiagnosed patient, if we are what we do while doing retinoscopy, always uh, we'll give the target to the patient, right? So that accommodation will relax and all. But same thing, like even while doing subject refraction also, they do occlude patient eye. But ideally, we should not do that, because if you are occluding patient eye, you are increasing the nystagmoid movement. And always retinoscopy should be performed in dark room so that the reflex can be appreciated properly. And please do not use phoropter while performing retinoscopy in low vision patient. You can use large aperture trial lenses or trial frame. Move off axis if it is required, and always try to maintain working distance, because if we are maintaining the working distance, later it will be easy for us to calculate the magnification and even to calculate their power. Uh, Now I would like to discuss on radical retinoscopy. Radical retinoscopy is helpful for media opacity patients with small pupils, with high powers, and even those who have very dull reflex. Because I have seen so many people, they do complain that, okay, I did not do retinoscopy because there was like dull reflex. And even I have seen that in retinoscopy, they will document, okay, very dull reflex. Uh, Rather than that, at least we can try this radical retinoscopy. Usually we have to perform it at 20 centimeter, and still if you are not able to see the reflex, you can move little closer. You can go to 10 centimeter, because it will improve the image brightness. And you have to maintain the working distance, like you have to calculate that power. And for near retinoscopy, it is used for determining the refractive status of infants and children. It is performed in complete dark room. The only illumination in the room being that supplied by the retinoscope when child fixating the retinoscope to light. So usually this is done for kids, for the children. And mostly in our practice, actually even I do focus on radical retinoscopy, because I can see that reflex little properly. And usually it is good for the patient who have very small pupil, and if they have media opacity patient, like in case of posterior subcapsular cataract, with retinoscope we can see that. So so it's better to go that. And moving towards the subjective refraction, always we have to start with retinoscopy value. No need to do like fogging and all, because we know that they have less vision. In normal schedule, in normal day-to-day life, always I do recommend do fogging, refraction and all. But in low vision department, better to start with retinoscopy value, or even you can go with bracketic technique. And always use trial frame, as I had told, rather than going with phoropter. and better to use large aperture lenses. As I have discussed about retinoscopy, now I would like to focus on bracketing and just noticeable difference. Uh, Actually, bracketing technique, it is the most, it is like most important technique when you are not able to find the objective refraction. Um, it is the determination of the refractive error, which is established by bracketing technique, in which equal power of plus and minus lenses are compared until a favorable response is noted. And it is the best method to perform if the objective refraction information doesn't appear to reliable. Yeah, I had told if there is no objective refraction, at least you have some clue like from where you have to start patient refraction. And in case of higher severe myopia and hypermetropia, so this is the like at least you will get idea from where you have to start. And bracketing technique is one of the most important technique where you will get certain plus and minus power, equal power for the subjective refraction. The smallest amount of lens.
Hello.
Now,
Hello.
hello.
Ma'am, please, would you explain about once again bracketing technique?
Yeah, actually, I have few examples. I'll discuss everything.
Yeah.
I'll explain about just noticeable difference. Then it will be easy for you. See, ideally, bracketing technique is one of like it is a method where you will get certain plus and minus power, like equal power, where you can start the subjective refraction. I'll explain in further slides. Now, just let me explain about this noticeable difference. It is the smallest amount of lens changes needed to produce an appreciation of change in clarity or blur. Like that is same thing. Like you are putting plus lens and minus lens, and you are asking the patient, this one is blur or this one is clear. That is the just like in I'm just talking in a simple way. That is just noticeable difference, or even you can say the difference noticed by the patient when the lenses are placed. That is same like lenses power will be equal. You will show to the patient this one is clear or this one is clear, and obviously patient will say this is more better than that one. And always we have to remember that the poorer the visual acuity, the larger the JND. Now, let me explain you how to calculate the JND lenses. Suppose patient visual acuity is 20 by 200. So always change visual acuity into 10 by x format. So it will be 20 by 200 equal to 10 by x. And simple mathematical calculation, 20x is 2000 and x will be 100. And now we can write visual acuity equal to 10 by 100. And always you need to divide denominator by 100. So now you will get 100 by 100 is 1. That means you have to start with plus minus 1 diopter, which is called just noticeable difference lenses. Now I will explain. Suppose you did calculation and patient visual acuity is 20 by 200 and you found that plus you got 1. That means either you have to start with plus minus 1. Once you will put plus 1 to the patient and you will ask this is clear, and you will put minus 1 and you will ask or this one is clear, and you will ask to compare. If patient is saying okay plus 1 is clear for me, that means patient power is like you have to start with plus, either that is more plus or you will accept little less plus. And if patient is telling that minus is clear for me, that means patient accepts minus power. That is either you have to increase that minus or you have to decrease the minus. One more example I would like to discuss. Suppose patient visual acuity is 20 by 60. At first convert it into 10 by x format. So it will be 20 by 60 is equal to 10 by x, and you will get x will be 300, and always divide this denominator by 100. So 300 by 100 will be 3. That means you have to start with plus minus 3. So how you are going to do? Same thing. You will put plus 3 and you will ask patient, like same thing, how do we do refraction? And now you will put minus 3. That is better or this one is better? Which one is clear? Obviously, patient will feel the changes and he will tell, okay, that lens was better for me or this lens is better for me. If he is telling that plus 3 is better, that means we have to, like, his power is towards the plus. Either we have to increase or we have to decrease. And same thing with minus as well. So now audience done. Suppose patient visual acuity is 6/60. Calculate JND. Hello.
We can hear you.
Okay. So you can find JND. Okay. Actually, I gave this question to audience. If they have understood JND, they can calculate the JND power. So you can write the answer in comment section as well. Moving towards the next point, if the K reading or retinoscopy indicates an astigmatism, always we find the axis first, and to find the cylindrical power, you can use Jackson cross cylinder. And in case of low vision patient, please always it is mandatory to use higher power Jackson cross cylinder, because obviously they won't be appreciate the detail change. Like if you are putting 0.25 or 0.5, they won't feel the difference. They won't appreciate the changes. And to choose the power, you can use same J and D rule. And please don't waste time by increasing or decreasing very small power. And one more very important instrument we can tell. It is found in all the trial sets, and the slit aperture will be 15 mm length and 1 to 2 mm wide. It is useful in finding out the axis of the cylinder. And same thing, like you can find the cylindrical power with the J and D rule. So am I very fast or am I okay?
It's perfect. It's correct. No problem.
Okay. So I would like to discuss some steps to calculate near power. So always when we are measuring the near acuity, we'll give target, I mean the chart to the patient, and we'll ask them to read till maximum they are able to read, and then we'll measure the working distance from their spectacle point to the target. We have to measure the working distance, and next is we have to ask like what are the patient goals. That means like during history we had asked like what are their hobbies, what they want to do in their free time, and what are their professional requirements and all. Then according to that we can find the target visual acuity. And to calculate the magnification or enlargement required, always we can use this formula: patient near visual acuity, that is best corrected visual acuity by target visual acuity. Target visual acuity is like what patient wants to read, or what is the goal of the patient, or what print size he prefers to read. And always we need to remember more than the required magnification. I'll explain in further slides. Now, before discussing about the target visual acuity, I just want to discuss about what is threshold and facility. Threshold is the smallest print size identified by the patient, and facility is the smallest print size patient can read comfortably. So rule of thumb is whenever you are finding target visual acuity, always it should be 2 times larger than the threshold. Okay, now moving towards how to find equivalent viewing distance. So it is saying patient original working distance. Actually, I have few examples. You can see that example and it will be easy for you. Now I'm just explaining about the formulas and all little theory part. It sounds little boring. I have few examples. Now, patient original working distance by required enlargement. That is at what distance they were reading the target, that distance by magnification that we have got through that target visual acuity and best corrected visual acuity. Now, at last, we have to calculate the dioptric power needed to focus at new working distance, that is 100, because it was in centimeters. So we want to convert it into diopter. So we have to divide by 100. Okay, now it will be easy for you to see the example. I'll clarify it through example. Suppose patient is reading antho target at 30 centimeters. So that is his threshold acuity. and he wants to read newspaper at always newspaper target will be an 8. So we need to remember that he wants to read an 8 target. So always the facility should be 2 times more. That means we can divide 8 divided by 2. That will be 4. So if we are calculating N4 based on N4 target, then patient can read the target fluently. But if you are calculating with N8, he will struggle to read that newspaper. And so the magnification will be best corrected visual acuity, because N24 is the best corrected visual acuity patient has read at 30 centimeter. And N4 is he wants to read newspaper. So we want to get the facility target visual acuity. So it is N8 divided by 2 N4. So 6x magnification will be best for his fluency. And now we have to find equivalent viewing distance. That is, at what distance patient will be comfortable to use the device. Like they should be like, he should know, right? Even we should know that at this distance he can see the things clear. If you are not calculating the equivalent viewing distance, and if you are randomly saying to the patient, okay, now find 6x is comfortable for you, go and use this, then obviously he won't be able to read the things clearly, and he won't be happy patient. At the end, patient will suffer. And then again, just remember, if one patient is happy, 10 more patient will be happy with us. Like he will get 10 more patient to us. So 30 by 6 will be 5 centimeter. Now we have to find the dioptric power, and that is called equivalent viewing power. 100, that is same, I told that I'm converting it into diopter. So 100 by 5 is 20 diopter. And one more thing we have to consider whenever we are giving diopter, we have to consider about their Basing prism. So in this case, I'm talking about theoretical. If you are giving 20 diopter, you have to give +2, that is 22 diopter Basing prism, so that it will not affect convergence. But in case of low vision patient, do you imagine that in few cases, I've seen very few cases they have binocularity. Most of them, they will have like one eye vision is very less and other is fine. Obviously their convergence, it has been affected. And if they have PL negative in one eye, PL positive, and next eye is fine, there's no point to give Basing prism, because anyways their convergence, it has been ruined. And I have seen like in theoretical wise, it has I have read that after +8 diopter, you should give Basing prism. But practically, I have given patient, like even I have seen patient after +6 diopter also, they were happy to get if you're giving the prism. And so always, whatever diopter you are getting, just +2 add on that. So that will be like, in this case, 20 + 2 will be 22 diopter. So you have to give 22 diopter Basing prism. Now this question I would like to give to the audience, like this is just for homework. Like patient is reading N36 at 20 centimeter, and patient wants to read N12 target. Just find the magnification or enlargement required, calculate the AVD, calculate the dioptric power, and find the Basing prism. You just can find it out, and during our discussion session, we can discuss the things. If you have any doubt or any confusion and all, I'll be happy to clear the doubts. Now moving towards the contrast sensitivity test. It is the ability of the visual system to distinguish an object from its background. So it is very useful tool in early detection of various diseases. It is a purely qualitative test. That is like, it tests the functional vision, or how well an individual see his visual objects, like how he's able to manage the things. Like patient, I have seen many people, like many patients, not only the low vision patient, they do say, I'm seeing blur, like since so many days I feel so blurry and all. And if you measure, their vision will be 6 by 6. Now I'm not talking about the accommodation part or a binocular vision therapy part. I'm talking about the normal general population. And then if you measure contrast sensitivity, their contrast sensitivity will be very less. So we'll get the idea. It doesn't matter that your patient vision is 6 by 6. It will not affect his contrast sensitivity. Many of us, we think that, okay, vision is 6 by 6, so obviously contrast will be fine. No, it won't be like that. So always we need to assess contrast sensitivity. How do we assess contrast sensitivity in low vision patient? Paley-Ropson contrast sensitivity chart is the gold standard chart. It can be measured like always we should keep that at 1 meter distance. And as we know, always like patient correction need to be there. And letters are arranged in triplets. And how do we do scoring? Suppose out of 3 letters, patient is able to read 2 letters. That means, okay, you can write that acuity. But if he is not able to read 2 out of 3, he is reading only 1. That means we have to go the previous letters he has read. So we can document according to that. So while documenting, always in Pelly-Robson, I have seen the chart will be there, so it will be behind the this Pelly-Robson chart, and you can assess patient contrast sensitivity, and then you can document it. So same thing you have to follow for the next eye. And ocular condition that affect contrast sensitivity are optic nerve problem, glaucoma, dense cataract, diffuse choroiditis, and then as I had told that a poor contrast indicates that the clinician should give more attention to glare control, contrast of viewing materials, and illumination. I had discussed that case, like one patient came and he told that I do see blurry vision and all. Everything was fine. Like he was able to read 6x6, and his binocular assessment was, everything was fine. And then we did contrast sensitivity. In that case, his contrast was really very poor. So in that case, we can suggest patient that, okay, while going out, wear the glasses or cap, or in what type of filter do you feel comfortable. So according to that, we can manage. It is not only for the low vision patient that contrast sensitivity is important. Even for our daily optometric practice, I feel contrast sensitivity plays much role and gives lots of idea. Now moving towards the visual field, there are many techniques to measure visual field. And visual field assessment, it gives lots of idea to know the visual field of the patient. At least we know the disease progression, like how it was in our previous assessment and now how it is. Either the disease has been more progressed or it is same, and even it will be easy for us to give to prescribe the devices. And then even in case of eccentric viewing, or in case of eccentric viewing training, and during the rehabilitation, like for mobility, orientation and all, it will give us idea to suggest the patient or to prescribe the optical device according to the visual field. So it is one of the most important tests. And Amstrad Gray chart is the most routinely practiced chart. It is used for the central visual field testing, and it measures 10 degree from the point of fixation. And then it is useful for the metamorphosia patient and the one who have small central scotoma, or even if you see that patient has some macular problem, then for those patients also, you can give this chart to their home, and you can teach them, okay, you have to look at the center, and then just like every day or every week or every 15 days or every month, you just notice your vision field of view is same or it has been changed, so they can monitor, and then we can suggest that if it is getting worsened, you can come to us. So always it is tested. Always the test, it is done at 33 centimeter. And if patient is not able to see the target, so you can ask or you can suggest the patient to use those intersecting line for the target. And there are many Amstrad Gray charts, so you can use with a different condition. Now I would like to talk about qualitative measurement and quantitative measurement. In our day-to-day practice, in our daily practice, basic confrontation technique is the most commonly used method to find the periphery visual field. And for quantitative measurement, arc perimeter is used. Suppose, and the best gold standard where it measures qualitative and quantitative, that is the Humphrey visual field analyzer. It gives center field of view plus peripheral field of view. You can see the disease progression, either it has an increase or decrease, everything. You can monitor patient field of view. And next thing, like suppose if you don't have visual field analyzer, because obviously in many clinic, or if you are doing your own practice, you may not have HFA. So you can do just basic confrontation technique. This is very important. I have seen like one patient was there. Like he was actually he was not aware that his field of view has gone, like his peripheral field of view is very less. So we did just basic confrontation, and we found that his field of view was really very affected. And even I have seen that if you are doing confrontation technique, and if patient is not able to see the target towards his face, that means he has just 15 degree of field of view from the point of fixation. So that is the best method to use. And even I feel like even in my clinic, I do confrontation technique, and like it is the best method if you don't have HFA. Glare. Now I would like to talk about glare testing. Glare is the reduction of visual function caused by scattering of incoming light. Glare testing is very useful for quantifying vision loss associated with light scatter. Even in case of media opacity patient, they do complain of glare, and like if they have glare problem, their vision will be diminished. Like their visual function won't be that proper what other people have. And the gold standard test is brightness acuity test, where we can assess patient glare. So how do we do that? Usually for cataract patient, corneal opacity patient, they do complain of lots of glare, and it measures the reduction in visual acuity in presence of glare. So how do we perform brightness acuity test? It is like patient should look into the instrument monocularly by using his base correction, and visual acuity should be assessed in non-illuminated condition, and then again we have to repeat the visual acuity with light to create the glare condition, and repeat for the other. And if there is reduction in the visual acuity more than 2 lines, that means patient has significant glare problem. So we can suggest them that okay, we can manage him by asking him by giving him some glasses, some filters, or we can suggest him to wear caps and all while he's going out. Now, suppose if you don't have a bat, or you don't have that instrument, then you can do practical. This method also, it is quite good, I feel. Always at first record patient visual acuity, and then repeat the same line while showing the ophthalmoscope light or any torch light. And if there is reduction in visual acuity more than 2 lines, then that means we'll get idea they have significant degree of glare. But in case of normal patient, if they don't have any problem with the glare, if you show the light just for few seconds, like within few seconds, their vision will be back. So we'll get idea that okay, patient visual acuity has been affected. Ocular conditions that causes glare are aniridia, albinism, iris uveal coloboma, retinitis pigmentosa, rod cone dystrophy, retinopathy of prematurity, diabetic retinopathy. Now binocular testing. See, binocular testing in case of low vision, it depends. Like we don't do binocular. Technically, like if I have to tell the truth, we don't do binocular testing for all the patients. Like if somebody's vision is PL negative or PL positive or very less, and the next eye visual acuity is fine. Okay, but there obviously that he doesn't have like he has suppression, and then he doesn't have like accommodation, convergence, everything has been good, everything has gone in touch. So again, it depends. Like majority of the visual impaired patients are monocular, but if in certain condition, if their both eye vision is almost same, almost 6/36 or 6/60, something like that, or 6/18, something like that, nearby, then you can assess it so that it will be easy for us to prescribe the device. Like either he can go uniocular device or binocular devices. And even I have seen like in few cases you can do word for dot, stropes and all. See, in word for dot, what we can find, we'll get idea either patient has fusion or he has diplopia or suppression. If we find that patient has diplopia, then obviously we'll try to solve that diplopia first, and then we can do that prescribing devices and all later. So for that cases, for few cases or For few cases we can do that, but still we can practice this method just to see that which is most preferable to give the devices. Either we can give monocular or binocular devices. Now color vision testing. Test to be performed monocularly for a diagnostic purpose, and then binocularly it's functioning in terms of confusing colors. So we usually like Ishihara, it is used for as a screening tool. Just we'll get idea that patient has red and green deficiency, but the gold standard is Farnsworth Munsell D15. This is the gold standard test where we can find either patient has red, green, blue deficiency, and so this is the best instrument to measure that. But at least you will get little idea with the Ishihara. But I don't recommend Ishihara in low vision department. Now moving to the management part. Today I'm not going deep on management part, but I would like to tell something little bit about management. So we can give illuminated, non-illuminated instrument depending upon the patient need, depending upon the patient goal requirements, depending upon the patient hobbies, what they like to do, and how they can manage their day-to-day activities. The most important part is always we have to see what they like to do in their day-to-day activities. We want them to be independent. We don't want them to be dependent on someone. They have come to us with the hope that they want to live their life how they were living before. Nobody likes to be dependent on anyone. Everybody likes to be independent. So even their expectation towards us will be same. So main goal, that's why like history was the most important point, so that we can solve this problem. So according to their disease condition, according to their requirements, we can prescribe the devices. So my presentation ends here, and I would like to acknowledge NeuroEye Foundation. So if you have any doubt, anything, I will be happy to answer any questions if you have now. So you can type the message or you can ask.
Thank you, Ms. Ritu Bhandari ma'am, for the informative session. Also, thanks to all the attendees and for the participation and patience. Now, if anybody have any queries, then you can write in this box. Then we'll answer this. Ma'am, there is one question. Should I read out the question for you?
Okay, please.
Do you consider acuity reserve while calculating magnification? What is the criteria to determine the acuity reserve if you prefer to do so?
Okay. So you mean to say like for near, like I think you mean to say for the near acuity, right? So always at first we have to see patient goals, like what patient wants to see. So during history and even during the calculation part, we can ask to the patient like what is your like what do you like to do in your free time, or what is your like main goal, like why she wants that instrument, for what purpose they want that instrument. So according to that we can calculate it. And if you see like grossly, like suppose if patient is telling that I'd like to read books, I like to read paper and all, so we'll get idea that the target size is and it. And if they are if they want that they want to read something very smaller size, so according to that, like again it depends, we have to ask to the patient. So according to that we can calculate. I think
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
that was the question.
Ma'am, there is the next question.
Okay.
How can we perform Berkeley rudimentary vision test?
Okay, good question. I was expecting this question actually. I have actually, like this, I have not, in our day-to-day practice, I have not seen practitioner using this chart, but this is a very important chart. Here, like this chart has been divided into 3 parts, like how we have Cardiff chart. like same thing, not exactly like Cardiff, but it has like the chart has been divided into three parts. One like it has been divided in three parts. One is single tumbling, and next is basic form of vision outside, and the next is black like uh, white field perception and black white perception is there. See here, like it is a in single tumbling, like the card will be like a flap type. There will be like some numbers upload will be there. There we can find from 100 amp to 25 amp. So total there will be two flap, like two pairs. But if you have to see the card wise, we can see total four card. And first one we can find 100 amp, and next one like 63 acuity, and the next one is 63 am notation, and another is 40 am. And like according to that, like at first we have to try it at 1 meter, and if patient is not able to read the chart at 1 meter, we have to go closer to 25 centimeter. Ideally this chart is calculated for 25 centimeter. And then next is like, suppose if patient is not able to read the single tumbling chart, that is same like if patient is not able to read last line, we will go above that line, same thing. Then we have to go in basic form chart. In basic form also there will be like a kind of like grating, like the grating size will be the same thing, four chart will be there, and then there will be a grating. So based on the grating we can find the acuity. And suppose in that grating also patient is not able to appreciate that there is a black and white light, then we can move towards the white field projection and black and white projection. It will be like there will be one chart, like same like Cardiff, half full part will be black part and half part portion there will be white. So and then another will be like almost quadrant part will be black and the rest will be white. And at 25 centimeter will show to the patient, are you able to uh, see the target, or you are not able to see the target? And if still patient is not able to see the target, then we'll know that patient has light perception. Like then we have to do light perception. No need to do hand movement and all. So this is how we do BRVT. Hope I'm clear.
Yes, it's very clear.
Yes. Okay. Lokesh, do you want to ask any question? So you can proceed.
Sorry.
I guess some of the attendees want to ask the question.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
okay. 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 There is one question, ma'am. Ma'am, is the patients can drive with a multiple pinhole?
Okay, very good question. Actually, see, while we know that multiple pinhole or pinhole, it will increase the depth of focus, but it doesn't mean that while driving you are giving the multiple pinhole. While driving, it is not only the distant vision; we have to see the periphery also. If you are giving multiple pinhole, you may not able to see the side object. So ideally, it is not recommended to give multiple pinhole while driving or while even like walking or running and all. So it is not recommended.
Okay. So there is one question in the low vision patient how to perform the confrontation test, or it's same as a normal patient because their visual acuity and visual field is very low.
Yeah, it is almost, it is same like we do same like how we do in day-to-day activities. Anyways, the distance is very close, and then they can find only in few cases if they have like light perception, like positive and all that. In that cases, they may not appreciate, but ideally in case of hand movement, counting finger, they can appreciate. It is same.
Okay. So I guess Lokesh, yes, sir. Lokesh, sir, any one of the patient want to ask the question. So you can unmute yourself and go to the question. No issues. Ma'am.
Yes, please.
Okay, so Samagya, can you please continue? I guess we didn't have any from the attendees. Okay, Samagya ma'am, are you there? Okay, no issues. So once again, thank you so much, ma'am, for accepting our request and coming here and giving us such a nice presentation. It means a lot to us. So we will happy to see you again and again in our platform. This is the wonderful session that we had. So, ma'am, okay, there is a one question from the Ajay Kumar Pal. Before that,
Okay.
ma'am, I would like to uh, request you if you have any feedbacks to our platform, or if you want to some convey to the
Yeah.
all of from the good notes from your side. Along with we'll be concluding this question. Okay, so Ajay Kumar also asking for how can we perform the just noticeable difference test in the children and dumb and dull patient.
Okay. So actually, in case of like you were talking about children, right? So in children, you can show cardiac acuity or layer symbol. See in dumb and dull, you can see the eye in cardiac and all. We don't suggest them to speak, or we do see their eye movement. So wherever they are moving, that means we know that okay, they have vision. That's why they are moving their eyes. In case of grating acuity chart, we can show it to the patient, and if wherever they are moving their eye, that means they have that much acuity. So according to that, we can do. And yeah, again depends upon eye movement of the patient, and again it depends like in which age, they are. Either they are 2 years, 3 years, or they are 6, 7 years old. And I think even light symbol also it works. So according to that, you should know the visual acuity of the patient. If you know the visual acuity of the patient, you can find the JND. So same thing, you have to use that formula. And main thing, you should know their acuity level. So I think I have answered his question.
Oh yes, ma'am. Okay, so Samagya ma'am, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, so I guess we have answered many of the queries. So you can proceed with the last formal session.
Okay. Okay. Well, I guess we have answered many of the queries. So considering the time limits, here I announce the closure of the discussion session. Before ending today's session, I'd again like to express my sincere gratitude towards the presenter, Ms. Ritu Bhandari ma'am, and all the attendees. Also, I'd like to appreciate all the helping hands for the iTalks program. Herewith, I'm ending today's session, requesting all of you to drop your reviews and feedback. Stay safe and keep in touch. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.